Hey, what's up guys? It's Andrew from Get Into Game Dev, coming at you again from another undisclosed location. This is what I like to call Rumble in the Jungle. So, the purpose of today's video is to examine Python and C++. I said in the last video that Python and C++ were very similar, so if you are starting out in Python and you're a bit worried, like, the stuff I'm learning, will it be relevant to C++? Let's have a look at that. And similarly, if you're okay with Python and you think, I want to learn C++, but it's a bit daunting, I don't know where to get started, well, the short answer is the standard template directory, standard template library is very similar to very similar to Python. So that's like the beginner-friendly place to start. So to start with, we'll just open up Visual Studio Code and whatever. So we're doing Python stuff. Now I am recording this on Mac, but any basic environment will run this just the same. This is just a standard Python setup. So what do we want to do? Well, let's say that we want to make a class. Okay, so just a really simple constructor, and let's say, I don't know, let's say we want to treat these as private variables. So actually we'll make a different one. We'll treat them as public variables, but we'll have a okay, so it's just taking the class's member variables and just doing some work with them. Just a really simple class to test things out. Then what we can do is, down below we have our main entry point, which we could explicitly test for or not. What we'll do is we'll say, okay, so we'll make a list. Okay, cool. So we make a list, we add items to the list, and then we can loop through the list. So we can go for that, and there we have it. So we go and run this right now, and it gives us the people's names and ages and all of that. We can probably just format that a little better. Great. Perfect. Okay, so we've got kind of the two most important things. We've got objects and we've got lists, and we're iterating through them. These are like really important for game design. So how do we do this same thing in C++? Well, first of all, not S code. Okay, so if you are doing this on Microsoft or Linux, it'll be slightly different, but just any sort of C++ environment. For Microsoft, it would be probably Visual Studio would be the best. And for Linux, I don't know. I don't do a lot of C++ stuff in Linux. Just any sort of text editor and then compile it, basically. So I'll just go back. If we're doing this on Xcode, we want to create a command line tool. That's just a basic like terminal sort of thing. Set the language to C++, and I'm going to call this, well, the first one was called test, so this one will be called test as well. And by the way, really great app is Spectacle, and what Spectacle does is helps us to manage our windows. So if I go Option Command left, it lines it up here. I can go Option Command right, Option Command up. Okay, cool. So we've got this. Just run this really quickly, check that it works. Build succeeded. Awesome. And down below it says Hello World. Cool. Good. So let's get these programs looking like each other. So the first thing I did was I defined a class for a person. So I'll do the same thing here. I'll go class person, and then we're going to have public and private members. And we don't have to really... okay, I'm just going to go with this. So we're going to have name and age. Name will be a string, but just to make this really easy, we're going to include the string library. And go with that. Okay, now we don't need a destructor, that's fine. But the next function we have is toString. So this will return there we have it. And let's set, why not? Let's set the other members as private. So we have, cool. So that's the basic idea. And this is how we would define it in a header, but we can actually just kind of jump in and write the source code. So we'll go and what I'm doing here is, this is pretty similar to self, right? So self is a reference to the instance itself. This is a pointer to the instance itself. And I'm doing this just to make sure. So what I could do is I could just go name equals name, but there would be some confusion here, because which scope are we referring to? Are we referring to the argument scope or the instance scope? Which is why this is super important, and it works the same way as Python's this. Okay, so then we have toString. So to is, let's make this super easy. We'll include the string stream. Now the cool thing about Builder is we can stream things into it just like we stream things into cout. So we're going to stream in name and our age, and now we don't need to use this because it is clear from the scope. Okay, so there we have it. It's a little bit, I don't know, a little bit convoluted, but not super bad. So the idea is this string stream notation is really, really good, is really useful, which is why I wanted to use a string stream object to build it. What we do is we get the result and we store the result in a string and then return it. And that should work just fine. So there we've got the class constructed. The next thing is we need a list of people. So we could make an array, but the issue with an array is we can't resize it on the fly. So an array which resizes on the fly in the C++ library is called a vector. So we'll go standard vector, and then these are not like Python. In Python you can pretty much just have a list of all different objects. We have to also pass in the type of object that we're storing, and we can't just, I mean, we could do this. It's a little more efficient to have pointers to people, and the difference is, okay, so what do we have? A name is a string which has 8 bytes per character, so it's some size, some number of bytes, and an age is an integer, which is 8 bits per character, 32 bits. So it's 32 plus 8 bits times however many characters. And if we store that in the vector, it's storing a lot on the stack as local variables. But what we can do is we can heap allocate that and store pointers so that for every person, we are just storing 62 bits. 64 bits for the memory location in virtual memory. So there we have that. Now, what we need to append. So we'll go, instead of append, we have push back, just pushes onto the back, that's it. And we're going to push back, we're going to go new person, done. Okay, now the next thing is we need to iterate through them. So typically we do something like in Python we go for person in people. Do some stuff. And it's actually incredibly similar. So what we've got for each element will be a pointer to a person, and then just instead of in, we have this. Okay, it's the same thing. Another thing, if we want to make this even easier, for even lazier, is we can just go auto. And what auto does is it tells the compiler, okay, you do the math, you work out what data type this should be. I mean, everything's all declared, I shouldn't have to do it, but just depending on the situation, I like to be explicit about the types. Okay, so what are we going to do? We are going to go output the person to string. Now we want to go like person dot to string, but this person is a pointer to a person. So we go this little access thing there. So we take that, and then we just need to also add, of course, that. And another difference is when we're just putting out a single character, like the new line character, it's just single quotation marks. But otherwise, as we can see, this is exactly the same. So if we run this right now, okay, cool, got it. Okay, so guys, I hope you don't think that I'm like perfect or any good at this. I still need to brush up from time to time. So when we have a string stream, if we call string with nothing in it, that returns the contents of the stream. When we go string and we put a string object in there, it replaces the contents. Okay. Right, so as we can see, that runs exactly the same. Runs exactly the same as the Python. The only other difference between these codes is when we call new, that allocates memory, and if it's part of a larger program, that memory should be freed. So then what we can do is we can free that memory. We can go for cool, and that will yep, pretty much just get rid of all the memory. And we actually don't need to call people clear at the end. It's just, it looks nice. That's a quick demo. Hopefully you can start to see that Python and C++ actually very similar. And if you're coming at it from a game development angle, you want to go from Python to C++, it's not too bad. These are some of the most important things to understand. The other thing, resources, I would strongly recommend Lazy Foo Productions. Learn SDL through that. It's really, really good. just to get up and running. SDL is the same kind of system, same underlying system as Pygame. Pygame is basically a wrapper around SDL. So if you're really interested in this stuff, you want to take the step from Python to C++, it's very similar to this. And C++ Primer, if you can find that book. I found that very good. Gets a bit dry, but the discussion about the standard libraries was pretty good. Okay, that's it for now. All the best. Get into game dev. I'll see you later.